The final week of the season means a ton for a lot of players for a lot of reasons. For some, they know it's the last time they're ever going to step on an NFL field, and they want to make the most of it, because after years of sacrifice and playing this game for their entire life, this is the end of that chapter. For some, they're fighting for a playoff spot, or for seeding, or for home field advantage, and are looking to keep their season alive. But for others, the final week of the season means a whole lot because of money. Yep, the green stuff. The final week of the season means one last chance to get a big payday and hit on some contract incentives. Every player has bonuses built into their contract where they get a sum of money if they hit X amount of sacks, or X amount of touchdowns, or X amount of yards. Just a couple of plays to pad your stats, and you could be tens of thousands of dollars richer. But while we hear all about the success stories from players hitting these bonuses, a lot of that is survivorship bias. What about the ones that don't? Better yet, what about the ones that fail at the last second? I'm not talking about the bonus a quarterback might get for throwing for 4,000 yards in a season, but entering the final week, they're at 2,900 yards, so they have no shot to reach the milestone. I'm talking about being painstakingly close to a big sum of money and not getting there, not necessarily because you didn't perform well, but because the team took you out. The team denied you a chance at a huge payday, and denied you the chance to get a little extra money. You'd feel pretty ticked off, right? Sure, it might be for the betterment of the team, and it might help the company out, but as an individual, you'd be peeved. And NFL players are no different, because this man right here that you've been watching this entire time is Miami Dolphins wide receiver Mark Clayton. And in 1985, the man was not only experiencing success with the Dolphins doing well, but the man was on the verge of a huge payday. And the Dolphins took it away from him. Instead of helping their player out, they stripped him of his cash. And 40 years later, it deserves a deep dive today. Because this is the story of what happens when you deny a man a shot at making his money. Before I talk about the incident in question, make sure you hit that like button down below. Subscribe, hype up that video, and turn on that notification bell so you don't miss a single video that we post on the channel. Because we post every single day on here about the weird and the wacky history of the NFL with stories like this one that you may not have heard of before. So if you like that sort of stuff, then this is definitely the place for you. Thanks in advance for liking and subscribing, and for hyping up the video, and for helping us grow this community. And with that in mind, let's talk about Mark Clayton's quest for greatness and money being thwarted by his own organization. But before I do talk about that and what specifically went down, we need some context to understand just who this man right here that we've been watching this entire time, Mark Clayton, is, and what he was going for in the first place. And to do this, we have to go back 1 year to 1984, when Clayton was on top of the football world. In 1984, the Miami Dolphins had the greatest passing attack that the league had ever seen. In 1984, the Dolphins finished 14-2 and made it to the Super Bowl. And a big reason why was because their offense, at least when it came to throwing the ball, was on another level. They led the league in passing yards and passing touchdowns. And it was because second-year man and first-round pick Dan Marino was a wizard under center. He threw 48 touchdown passes, which was the most in NFL history at the time, and was 16 ahead of second place on the season. And he also threw for 5,084 yards, becoming the first quarterback in league history to throw for 5,000 yards in a season. Today, 5,000 yards is a really big accomplishment. Back in 1984, that was unheard of. When you're throwing for that many yards and that many touchdowns, you've got to have some darn good receivers that can get open and catch it. You've got to have targets available at your disposal. And Dan Marino had an awfully good one in this man right here, Mark Clayton. Clayton was drafted out of Louisville in the 8th round of the 1983 NFL Draft. so the same exact class that Marino came out of. And while he didn't do much as a rookie, in his second year, the man became one of the most feared receivers in football. He was named a Pro Bowler and an AP second-team All-Pro after finishing the year with 73 receptions for 1,389 yards and 18 touchdowns, with his 18 touchdowns leading the entire NFL. In fact, his 18 touchdowns wasn't just to top the NFL, but was the literal NFL record for most receiving touchdowns in a season, breaking the previous record of 17, held by Crazy Legs in 1951 and Don Hudson in 1942. Today, Randy Moss holds the record with his 2007 season with the New England Patriots. Additionally, his 1,389 receiving yards was the 11th most in a season in NFL history at the time, and was the third most in football in 1984, only behind Roy Green of the St. Louis Cardinals and John Stallworth of the Pittsburgh Steelers. To say that Mark Clayton burst onto the scene in 1984 would be putting it lightly. It'd be an understatement, as he went from a virtual no-name to one of the best wideouts that the game had. Even more impressive is the fact that he was taken with pick number 223, which was basically a throwaway pick. The 222nd pick and the 224th pick didn't even play a single snap in the NFL, unless the names Mike Dotterer and Todd Hallstrom ring any sort of bells for you. And yet, here was Clayton, catching touchdown after touchdown and being the go-to man on the greatest passing offense the league had ever seen. Which raised the obvious question: what could Mark Clayton do for an encore in 1985? Well, he didn't quite reach the same heights that he did in 1984, which were almost impossible to reach, but he still played out of his mind. Much like they were in 1984, the Dolphins were one of the best teams in football in 1985, sitting atop the AFC East with an 11-4 record and a top 5 offense in the NFL. The Dolphins were one win away from winning the AFC East and had essentially clinched a playoff berth entering the final week of the season. While they hadn't officially clinched a playoff spot, all they had to do was not lose to the Buffalo Bills by 36 or more points. And the Bills were 2-13. So unless the Dolphins lost at home by 6 possessions to the literal worst team in football, the Dolphins were in the playoffs. It was the closest thing to clinching a playoff spot without actually clinching a playoff spot in NFL history. We've seen some crazy things happen in the league before, especially on the final week of the season. But I think it was safe to pop the champagne and assume that the Dolphins were in the playoffs and wouldn't lose the final week of the season by 36 or more points. For some perspective, imagine if the Patriots in 2025 played the Jets on the final week of the season, and the Pats would make the playoffs if they won, tied, or lost by 35 or less. You could celebrate, is what I'm getting at. And one of the main reasons why the Dolphins were so good in 1985, much like 1984, was because Mark Clayton was essentially picking up right where he left off, as you can tell by all these clips. For the second straight season, Clayton was named to the Pro Bowl, as he entered the final week of the season inside the top 10 in receiving yards. After having 73 receptions in 1984, which was the franchise record at the time for most receptions in a single season, he was potentially on pace to break that record again, as he entered the final week of the year with a very nice 69 receptions, which was also inside the top 10 of the NFL. Yes, the touchdowns took a drastic decline, as he went from setting the NFL record for most touchdowns in a season by a receiver to having just 4 through the first 15 games. But seeing as he scored the dagger touchdown against the Chicago Bears on Monday Night Football to end their undefeated season, we knew he could still find the end zone if the team needed him to. And when it came to yardage, like I mentioned, he was inside the top 10 in the NFL in receiving yards through 15 weeks. The number he was at? 973 yards. If he could get 27 yards during the final week of the season, then he'd hit 1,000 yards for the second straight year. What does 1,000 yards mean? Other than the fact that you're really freaking good at catching the ball and making men miss in the open field? For one, it would make Clayton the second receiver in Dolphins history to hit the 1,000-yard mark twice, joining his teammate, Mark Duper. But number two, it would give Clayton a pretty good payday. Most receivers have a bonus in their contract for hitting certain yardage milestones, and 1,000 is the most common one. That nice round four-figure number results in a nice bonus. So if Clayton could get just 27 yards on the final week of the season, which doesn't seem like much, he'd get some money coming his way. And in theory, there was no universe where Clayton shouldn't have been able to hit this mark. In the first 15 games, Clayton got at least 27 yards in 14 of them, with the lone exception being a game against the New England Patriots, where he only had 20. He crossed 27 yards in every game during the 1984 season, including the 3 playoff games that the Dolphins had. So over Clayton's last 34 games, he hit 27 yards or more receiving in 33 of them. And not only did Clayton cross that mark in all 3 games he played against the Buffalo Bills during that stretch, but in the first game he played against Buffalo in 1985, a 23-14 victory for the Dolphins up in New York, Clayton had 5 catches for 60 yards, easily surpassing that mark. The Bills had nothing to play for in the final week of the season, with their season being over a long time ago, with the team on a new coach, with the team being 2-13, and with the team having one of the worst passing defenses in the league. Combine that with the fact that it was a perfectly sunny day, so the conditions were ideal for throwing and for catching the ball, and this man right here, Mark Clayton, shouldn't have any trouble getting to 1,000 yards. Get your 27 yards, get that bonus, get out of here with a win and a division title, and enter the playoffs on a high note as division champions once again. Well, this game right here brought both good and bad news for the Dolphins. The good news was that the Dolphins absolutely dominated, to the surprise of absolutely no one. There is a reason that the Bills were one of the worst teams in football, and there's a reason that Miami entered this game as 17.5-point favorites, and both of those were on display on this final Sunday of the season, because midway through the fourth quarter, the Dolphins led it 21-0. Miami had more than double the first downs that the Bills had, winning that battle 24-11. The Bills turned it over a whopping 6 times, and they committed, get ready for this, 19 penalties. Unless you're the Atlanta Falcons against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers on Thursday Night Football in 2025, for some inexplicable reason, you're not winning any games, let alone staying competitive in any games where you commit 19 penalties. It just shouldn't be possible to play that sloppily. And the Dolphins defense dominated, with Buffalo quarterback Bruce Matheson going 10 for 24, completing just 41% of his passes, with no touchdowns, 3 interceptions, and a passer rating of 29.9, which is worse than if he did nothing but spike the ball into the ground on every single play. The Bills knew that Jim Kelly was on the horizon with the impending collapse of the United States Football League, and games like this made their fans ever so grateful that the day was coming. So yeah, that's the good news. This game was complete and utter domination. The bad news was that you might be noticing something that's not happening during this game. And you might notice a certain player missing from the action. And that's because Mark Clayton, well, he was practically invisible. We were midway through the fourth quarter, and Clayton, who seemed like a surefire thing to get to 1,000 yards on the season and get a paltry 27 yards on the day, had just 1 catch for 23 yards. Part of it was that there wasn't much of a reason to throw the football. The Dolphins were dominating on the ground, which feels weird to say when talking about the Miami Dolphins of the Dan Marino era. But you don't mess with a winning formula, especially when it's killing clock And especially when you've got the playoffs on the horizon and don't want to risk any potential injuries on unexpected collisions or legs bending the wrong way in the open field or on a sack. The Dolphins had 179 yards on 36 carries. And if we exclude the 2 kneel downs at the end, because those don't really count, it was 185 yards on 34 carries. So for all intents and purposes, the Dolphins averaged 5.5 yards per carry. If you can run the ball that well, especially on a day where your defense has forced 6 turnovers, meaning that you want to dominate the time of possession and get the other team gassed, why wouldn't you keep doing that? Especially when you've led, for the most part, wire to wire. Still, during the game, this man right here, Mark Clayton, was just 4 yards away from 1,000. 4 measly yards, and he sets a milestone and gets a bonus. And at this stage in the game, you'd figure that the coaching staff would throw him a bone. You see plenty of teams do something like this if a player is close to a milestone, where they'll design a play specifically to get him what he needs. We saw the Buccaneers do this in 2024 when they called their last play of the game specifically to get Mike Evans to 1,000 yards on the season. It wasn't the final week of the season, but we saw the Steelers do this in 2014 against the Jaguars when Antonio Brown had a streak of games with 5 or more catches. And with Brown at 4 catches, they just threw him a screen with no time left to get him to 5. You think with Clayton just 4 yards away that they throw him a screen, get him the ball in a high percentage play, get a convoy out in front, get 5 or 6 yards, get him to 1,000, get him his milestone, and then take him out of the game. That's what most teams would do here, knowing that at this point, the game was wrapped up and there was a guy on a contract incentive. Instead, the Dolphins did not do that. Instead, the Dolphins, knowing that the playoffs were on the horizon, even though they were getting a bye week by virtue of winning the division, pulled all of their starters, including Mark Clayton. With 7 minutes to go, and with Mark Clayton at 996 receiving yards, he would end the season at 996 receiving yards. The Dolphins would throw 2 more passes for the rest of the game, but it would be backup quarterback Don Strock, not starting quarterback Dan Marino, throwing them. The passes went to Jim Jensen and Tommy Vigorito, 2 guys who hadn't caught a pass all season for the team. The Dolphins would win the game 28-0, dominating it. But Mark Clayton, after one of the quietest games of his career, was not happy. Mark Clayton was just watching on the sidelines, watching the clock tick down, knowing that his bank account was not going to be as big as he thought entering the day. As each second came off the clock, Clayton saw his chance at a payday and saw his chance at a milestone that every receiver dreams of hitting evaporate into thin air. And when the clock hit 0, he didn't feel joy. His team won, sure, but he didn't feel happy at all. Because to say that he was fuming would be putting it lightly. After the game, reporters met up with Clayton, and unsurprisingly, he was in no mood to talk. Normally, you'd think the mood in the locker room after winning a division title, especially after winning by 28 points in a shutout, would be either indifference or happiness. It would either be a moment where the guys are saying that the job isn't done and that now the real season begins and now things are going to get tougher, or happiness if they had a good regular season and won a game and played their butts off and got a shutout and are going to play a playoff game in front of their home fans. You wouldn't think it'd be angry, but for Mark Clayton, it was, as he quickly got dressed and left the locker room. As Clayton said before taking off prematurely, "I don't want to say anything. The reason I don't want to say anything is I might say the wrong thing." When a reporter asked him if he was upset about not getting to 1,000 yards and not getting his bonus, Clayton didn't say anything, but he emphatically nodded his head yes, which tells you everything you need to know. This was clearly bothering him. head coach Don Shula defended his decision to bench Mark Clayton and pull his starters from the game up 21-0, seeing as the reporters were wondering why Clayton was so upset. Shula didn't care about the contract incentives. Shula didn't care about the money. As the head coach, he was thinking about the bigger picture. As Shula said, with the game decided, I'm not going to risk injury to an important player. That's one of the reasons I took Marino out. Shula viewed Clayton as an important player, and it's not hard to see why, seeing as he was one of the best receivers in football and made the Pro Bowl each of the past 2 seasons. From a team perspective, in terms of succeeding in the playoffs and getting to the Super Bowl for the 2nd straight season, and for the 3rd time in 4 years, nothing good could come from playing Clayton in the final 7 minutes, even if all Shula had to do was throw him a screen pass. The best case scenario is that Clayton catches the ball, he doesn't get hurt, and the Dolphins win the game. The worst case scenario is that Clayton goes down the wrong way or takes a shot to the head and has to miss some time and can't play in the divisional round. And now, the Dolphins don't have their best receiver. If you remove Clayton from the game, you ensure that he's healthy and that nothing can go wrong and that you have him for the postseason. Strictly from a coaching standpoint and strictly from a standpoint of playing to win the game with sights on the bigger picture and the main prize, this move was 100% the right one by Don Shula. But on the other hand, you can definitely understand the frustrations of this man right here. And you can definitely see why Mark Clayton was fuming. You're going to deny me a chance at a bonus and a good payday? Remember that players back in 1985 were not making what they're making today. They could play in the NFL as a full-time job, but it's not like they were making a crap ton of money. Clayton was making $350,000 a year, which, adjusted for inflation, comes out to a hair over $1 million per year. Obviously, that's good money, but it's not an ungodly amount of money like we see some wideouts make today. It's not like you're denying Clayton a chance at getting an extra $100,000 when he's making $20 million a year. Clayton was an 8th-round pick in 1983, so he wasn't playing for much money at the start of his career. He had a chance for a payday and needed 4 yards to do it. And you, as the head coach, when you make more money than me per year, making about $500,000 per year, are going to deny me a chance to get paid? I completely get both sides here. There is a human element to this, and most people would be ticked off if they got denied a chance at making good money in a relatively low-risk scenario, because their boss just decided it wasn't in their best interest that you get paid, because you getting paid doesn't benefit the company and help them out. Having said that, Clayton would go on to have a highly successful career in the NFL, playing 11 seasons in the league and spending 10 of those years with the Miami Dolphins. He made it to 5 Pro Bowls and had plenty of chances to get paid afterwards, crossing the 1,000-yard milestone in 1986, 1988, 1989, and 1991. It's not like this turned out to be Clayton's last chance at greatness. The man was the go-to guy for Dan Marino for years and ended his NFL career with 582 receptions for 8,974 yards and 84 touchdowns. He made some good money along the way on future contracts. By the time Clayton retired after the 1993 season, the man retired as one of the best receivers of all time. He was 16th in NFL history in receiving yards. He was 16th in NFL history in receptions, and was 7th in NFL history in receiving touchdowns. And by the time Clayton retired, he was one of 10 players to have at least 5 seasons of 1,000 yards. I'm not saying that Clayton is a Hall of Famer, but for what it's worth, if Clayton got just 4 more yards during that 1985 season, and he got a screen pass to get to 1,000 yards against Buffalo, he would have been one of just 5 players at the time to have 6 or more seasons of 1,000 yards, with the other 4 guys being Jerry Rice, Steve Largent, Lance Allworth, and James Lofton, all guys who are currently in the Hall of Fame. Even though Clayton had a heck of a career by anyone's standards, let alone the standards of an 8th round pick, Shula's decision might have done more than just deny a man his bonus. Today, Mark Clayton is regarded as arguably the greatest receiver in the history of the Miami Dolphins franchise, and for good reason, as his name sits proudly in the Miami Dolphins Ring of Honor as one of just 4 receivers to earn this distinction. But he could have been a little bit richer, and his career could have been a little bit greater with just 4 extra yards. 4 extra yards in a game against the 2-13 Buffalo Bills, and who knows what butterfly effect that causes. Because on this December day in 1985, when it came to Mark Clayton, the only green he was seeing was the green on the Orange Bowl field and the green on his Dolphins jersey. He wasn't seeing any green in his wallet. Check out our live streaming schedule for the next few days. We're live every single day on this channel, whether we're covering a sporting event or playing GeoGuessr or just taking your requests. So make sure you like and subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss a single time that we go live and so that you can join this community. Also, thanks to all our members and our Patreon supporters who get exclusive perks like their name of the end of each video, members-only Q&A streams, and cool emojis to use on videos and during streams. See how you can join this community and become a member or a Patreon member by clicking the link in the description below.